Happy Monday again, MMA fans. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys tuned in for part 1 of UFC on ESPN Plus. This is part 2. So in the first episode, I covered the first 3 fights. In this episode, I'm going to cover the second 3 fights. So kicking it off with the 4th fight of the night out of the lightweight division, number 15, Gregor the Gift Gillespie versus Yancy Medeiros. So Gillespie's 31 years old and he's undefeated, 12-0 in his MMA career. Yancy is also 31 years old, 15-5 in his MMA career. Gillespie's the big favorite, and for good reason, which I'll touch on in a second. But coming out of Vegas, Gillespie is a minus 535 favorite. So over a 5-1 favorite coming out of Vegas for Gillespie. A little bit about him though. He's a 4-time NCAA All-American wrestler and the 2007 national champion. Undefeated, as I mentioned, in MMA, 12 wins. Out of those 12 wins, he's finished 10 fights. So this dude is an absolute killer, and he's got an even split of knockouts and submissions. I love this guy. It's one of the reasons why the lightweight division is by far the most stacked division in all of the UFC. You've got the number 15 guy, so this guy just made the rankings, and he's undefeated, and in my opinion, is a future contender. Now, I don't know if this guy will ever be champ because you got people like Khabib Nurmagomedov at the top of the division, but this dude will absolutely, mark my words, in 2019 be competing, if not for the title, because of how sort of stacked it is at the top there. There's a lot of people who deserve a shot at the title. He won't maybe not be competing for the title, but he will absolutely be there facing top 5 guys by the end of the year. And he'll probably be beating some of them too. This dude's got super crisp technique on the feet and on the ground. Absolutely tight, compact. I love his style. Ground and pound specialist. When he gets control of you, his wrestling skills are elite. When he gets on top of you, you're not getting up. He's either going to pound your head into the mat or into the canvas, or he's going to submit you. He's facing Yancy Medeiros, who is no slouch. He's coming off a TKO loss to Donald Cerrone in the welterweight division. So Yancy's dropping down to the lightweight division for this fight. And something interesting about Yancy is when he started his MMA career, he started at light heavyweight. Then he moved down to middleweight. Then he moved down to welterweight. Now he's moving down to lightweight. So this is his debut at 155. So it'll be interesting to see how Yancy performs after this weight cut, which is going to be his biggest weight cut to date. Out of his 15 wins, he's got 12 finishes. So like I said, no slouch. He's got that sort of killer instinct that I mentioned Gregor has, just not to the level of Gregor, I don't think. So he's got 8 knockouts, 4 submissions. No slouch. I'm going to keep it short though. Gregor Gillespie is one of my favorite. Even though he's 31 years old, I'll call him an up-and-coming fighter in the entire UFC. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's got flawless technique, and I love his attitude. So I think this one might be kind of short. I'm going Gregor Gillespie, second-round TKO over Yancy Medeiros. 5th fight of the night out of the heavyweight division, Greg Hardy versus Alan Crowder. So Greg Hardy, 30 years old, 3-0 in his MMA career. Alan Crowder, 28 years old, 9-3 in his MMA career. Greg Hardy, huge favorite in this fight. Vegas odds got him at minus 530, so over 5-1 favorite for Greg Hardy, and for good reason. So when Greg Hardy's not beating up women, he's kicking the crap out of men in the octagon. As I'm sure you know, he's a former NFL player. He's a former All-Pro defensive end. I think when he played for the Carolina Panthers, he still holds to this day the all-time sacks. He's the all-time sacks leader in a season for that team. So, you know, I got to give it to the guy. You know, he's a piece of crap, you know, when he's not competing in sports. But it seems like when he sets his mind to something in athletics, he really is elite. So 3-0 in the octagon, as I mentioned. All 3 of those were knockouts. I think the combined total in his 3 fights is 2 minutes and 7 seconds. So he's not just knocking his opponents out. He's doing it quick and early and with a lot of power. This guy hits like a Mack truck. He's fighting Alan Crowder. 9 wins in the MMA, 8 finishes. So Alan Crowder is no slouch either. He's always been sort of undersized for being a heavyweight. I looked it up the other day. I think he's 237 pounds, and we know heavyweight goes up to 265, which you better believe Greg Hardy's going to be weighing in at about 265. So he's always been facing the bigger guys, and he does perform well against them. He's a pretty well-rounded fighter. Standing up, he seems to inflict some damage. He seems to outlast his opponents, get some takedowns in the later rounds, and finish his fights in the later rounds. But, I gotta say, Alan Crowder's defense is horrible. This guy is always taking punches. And when you're facing Greg Hardy, if you don't keep your hands up and keep your distance, it's not going to end well for you. So I'm going to keep this one short because I think the fight's going to be short. I'm going Greg Hardy first round knockout. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the 6th fight of the night, the main event, coming out of the flyweight division, the champion at bantamweight, TJ Dillashaw, versus the champion at flyweight, Henry Cejudo. TJ is a minus 200 favorite in this fight, 2-1 favorite coming out of Vegas for TJ. Dillashaw, he's 32 years old, 16-3 in his MMA career. Cejudo, 31 years old, 13-2 in his MMA career. And guys, I am really looking forward to this fight. What can I say? I mean, both of these guys are absolute experts in their specific crafts or styles of MMA. TJ being a Bang Muay Thai expert and Henry being a former Olympic gold medal wrestler. So let's touch on TJ for a second, though. He's the number 5 pound for pound fighter in the world, and in my opinion and many others, the greatest bantamweight in the history of the UFC. So dropping down to flyweight for this fight. So big weight cut ahead for TJ, and it'll be interesting to see how he performs at flyweight. But I mentioned TJ's a Bang Muay Thai expert. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt and a former collegiate wrestler. TJ's on a 4-fight win streak since his split decision loss against Dominic Cruz, which I thought he won that fight. I've watched it a couple of times, and I thought TJ won that fight. I didn't think Dominic did enough to come in there and unseat the champion with that performance. So out of TJ's 16 wins, though, he's finished 11 of his opponents, 8 knockouts and 3 submissions. So Henry Cejudo, he's the number 11 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He's the current flyweight champion after his amazing performance against Demetrius Johnson, which I've watched that fight a couple of times as well. The first time I watched it live, I thought Henry won the fight. The second time I watched it, though, I don't know, I thought maybe Demetrius won that just based off of a point scoring basis with the leg kicks that he inflicted on Henry Cejudo, but that's a conversation for another day. Henry, as I mentioned, he's a former Olympic gold medal wrestler. He's only been training MMA since 2013, so he's still relatively new to the game, and his only 2 losses so far were against Demetrius Johnson and Joseph Benavidez. So the fight against Benavidez was a split decision loss, and he, of course, avenged his loss against Demetrius Johnson. So Henry is absolutely deserving of that number 11th pound-for-pound fighter in the world ranking. It seems like every performance we see him in, he only gets better. But he's up against TJ Dillashaw, who is by far, his toughest task to date, more than Mighty Mouse Johnson. Henry is a point fighter, though. So out of his 13 victories, 8 of those have come by decision. He's very smart. He utilizes his wrestling really well. He controls his opponents really well. And on the other hand, TJ is an absolute killer. So TJ, listen, I can't say that I like TJ Dillashaw or really ever root for him. You can see back here, I've got a signed photo of Cody Garbrandt. Now, I know Cody Garbrandt is a very controversial fighter, but I love Cody Garbrandt's style. Not that he's got flawless technique, which we've seen him exposed by TJ twice. I just love Cody's style, that aggression, I'm going to knock your beep out. So I can't say that I've ever really rooted for TJ in the past, but I cannot deny his greatness. He's one of the best fighters I've ever seen. Even at 32 years old, he gets better and better every fight. Leaving Team Alpha Male was the best decision he ever could have made, because what him and Dwayne Ludwig have been doing and how TJ just outsources all of his training. I mean, he's got the best coaches for each aspect of his game. Strength and conditioning, Muay Thai, wrestling. I mean, TJ Dillashaw really brings the best people in from all around the world to give their undivided attention at making him great. And they really have. TJ is one of the best fighters I've ever seen. So, the matchup, though, here, I actually think that both of these guys are bad matchups for one another. And what I mean by that is we've never really seen somebody, the level of wrestler of Henry against TJ. It seems like most of the time TJ goes to the ground, he's the one in control. We've never really seen anybody and get on top of TJ and control him and control where the fight takes place. And that's a credit to TJ for just being a master at MMA. He doesn't let his opponents ever take him down and control him on the ground. But I think if somebody were to be able to do that, it's Henry Cejudo. On the other hand, TJ Dillashaw is a horrible matchup for Henry Cejudo. TJ Dillashaw is a former collegiate wrestler, and there are levels to this game, and Henry is by far a better wrestler than TJ Dillashaw, but TJ Dillashaw is one of the most well-rounded fighters we've seen. His cardio is through the roof, and he will rip your head off with punches, elbows, kicks. And I think that the key to beating Henry is by hurting him, and I don't think anybody is more fit or better suited to hurt Henry Cejudo than TJ Dillashaw. So I think they're both bad matchups for each other. It'll be interesting to see if Henry is able to ever take TJ down, and if so, is he able to keep him down? If he is able to keep him down, is he able to inflict damage when he gets him down? Because as we saw in the Demetrius Johnson fight, he was able to take Demetrius Johnson down to the ground, but he really wasn't able to inflict damage while he was in control of him. So the last thing that I want to touch on in this fight is the mental aspect of fighting. And I touch on this in a lot of my fights, but in this one I think it's very important, because when Henry Cejudo fought Demetrius Johnson, I don't know if you guys remember, in the first round of that fight, in the first minute or two, Henry Cejudo was so nervous, his left leg couldn't keep his balance. It looked like he was rolling his ankle a few times. And Joe Rogan was like, he didn't know what the heck was going on. Demetrius Johnson hit him with a couple of leg kicks early on, and they all thought it must be damage from one of those leg kicks. But it was so weird how he'd take a step and almost fall over because he was like rolling his ankle. And when I was watching that fight live, from the moment Henry started walking out to the octagon, I thought, boy, he looks nervous. And rightfully so. He's facing a guy who he fought a couple of years ago and knocked him out in the first round. But I thought, boy, he looks nervous. And then the fight started and he starts wobbling. So I think even though Henry Cejudo is a guy who's won a gold medal in the Olympics, I think that he's a guy who might struggle with mental preparation, or maybe not mental preparation, but nerves heading into these matchups, these fights, or I don't want to say wrestling matches, but these fights that are on the biggest stage when all the marbles are on the table, you know? On the other hand, I think TJ Dillashaw is one of the sharpest mental fighters I've ever seen. That's why I respect TJ so much, because when it comes to execution in the fight, you know, he's second to none. And then when it comes to mental preparation for these fights, he's second to none either. I mean, I'd put TJ Dillashaw up in the category of like a Khabib Nurmagomedov when it comes to mental preparation for fights and not letting nerves get the best of you. You always see TJ taking really deep breaths, you know, walking up to the octagon. Once he gets in there, he's always controlling his breathing, controlling his nerves. So I think that that's really something to pay attention to, is how nervous is Henry going to look stepping into the octagon, and how controlled is TJ going to look stepping into the octagon, because the mental aspect of fighting is just as, if not more important than the physical aspect of fighting. So I think that was something to note. But anyway, let me get to my prediction here. All of the respect to Henry Cejudo. This guy's world class, and as I mentioned, he's all deserving of the number 11th pound-for-pound fighter in the world ranking. But he's facing TJ Dillashaw, and I think that TJ is unstoppable right now. I will want to pay attention to how TJ handles this weight cut, but he's professional in all aspects of fighting, and I think that he has hired, you know, one of the best nutritionists in the world to get him prepared for this weight cut, and I think he's going to do a good job with it. And Henry also has difficulty making 125 pounds as well, so it's not an easy weight cut for either of these guys. TJ Dillashaw is one of the best in the world. I think he's unstoppable. I'm going to go TJ Dillashaw, third round knockout or TKO over Henry Cejudo. So that's it, guys. Thank you as always for watching. As I mentioned in the very first video that I ever made, please comment. I created this channel to interact with other MMA fans because a lot of my friends and my girlfriend and stuff, none of them watch MMA or the UFC. So I created this channel to interact with you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Let me know who you think's going to win these fights, how you think they're going to win these fights, and why you think that's the case. And also, please tune in to part 1 of this first card on ESPN Plus that I created, the first 3 fights to this main card. Let me know the same thing over there, who you think's going to win, how, and why. So thanks again for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing a recap video for this fight on Sunday. I'm going to film it. Maybe it doesn't come out until Monday, but I'm going to try and get it done on Sunday. Recap the fights, react to what happened, let you know who we were right about, maybe where we went wrong, and look forward from there. So thanks again, everybody.